The 2019 national champion of college football is MarkRogersTV, the voice of college football, breaking down the big game between LSU and Clemson tonight in New Orleans. Both teams are undefeated. The Tigers of Clemson have not lost a game since 2017 against Alabama in the college football playoff. They've won 29 consecutive games. LSU has been arguably the best team in the country for most of the season against a difficult schedule. Clemson has dominated its poor schedule, but then defeated another elite team in Ohio State 29-23 in the college football playoff, while LSU played a lesser team, a good team, but a lesser team certainly in Oklahoma, dominating that game with 49 points in the first half. So what do we know in trying to determine who is most likely to win this game? Because either team can win this game. So let's make that point very clear. Let's not be surprised if either team wins this game. Both of these teams are very capable of winning this game and being crowned national champion. If they played 10 times, they probably would split the 10 games, or it would be a 6-4 series. What do we know about LSU? They have performed better on the offensive side of the football than any team in the country. Even beyond the metrics, consider the metrics and the stats against the competition of Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Texas, and a healthy Texas defense in week 2. They have produced one of the top 10 defenses in the country over the past 4 or 5 weeks. Clemson played a rough schedule, meaning a bad schedule. Texas A&M was the most talented team that they played this season before Ohio State, and Virginia was the best performing team through 12 games that they played, and they beat them 62-17. So Clemson, outside of the North Carolina game in which they struggled, of course, winning 21-20, dominated a schedule that they should dominate. LSU did not play during the regular season or in the playoffs against Oklahoma, a team that approaches the skill, the talent, or the productivity of an Ohio State. So on the two-team schedule, Clemson has played the best team in Ohio State, but LSU has played a large collection of really good top 10 to 15 teams. And they have handled every challenge, of course. Let's take a look at the Clemson game against Ohio State, because that's our best barometer of who Clemson is, without a doubt. And we've got to assume, going into this analysis, we've got to assume that both teams brought their A game. Now, it could be possible that Ohio State brought its A game and Clemson brought its B- game and still was good enough to beat Ohio State to get to the championship game. Maybe those Ohio State mistakes allowed Clemson to get to the championship game, and actually the Buckeyes are a better team. But, of course, Clemson made the plays and got to the championship game. So we've got to assume, because it's our only data point of elite teams, that Ohio State showed up, Clemson showed up, they slugged it out, they played a great game, they played it down to the wire, and Clemson prevailed. But let's keep in mind that Ohio State statistically was the better team. They outgained Clemson by about 100 yards. They, of course, controlled much of the game, basically the entire first half until 3 minutes left in the first half. Clemson benefited from questionable calls. There is no doubt about that. Even if the calls were correct, Clemson did not make plays in those particular incidents. They didn't make the plays. They received a first down based on a roughing the kicker. They received a first down based on a target hit. They had 2 dropped passes by Ohio State result in points taken off the board. So we could go on, and I'm not debating the calls. I'm just saying Clemson did not have to make plays. They were given gifts either by the officials or by Ohio State not completing plays. So let's keep that in mind. Clemson made the plays offensively and defensively in the last drive for each unit to win the football game. They drove it 4 plays, 94 yards, and figured out a way to get Travis Etienne the football on 2 huge touchdown plays to spring him loose when he couldn't run it from a traditional running back set. They also determined that Trevor Lawrence could be a running back of sorts, and that proved very effective. So, because that's the game to look at, all things being equal, how does LSU stack up against Ohio State? Justin Fields is a very talented quarterback, but he was compromised and limited by the knee brace and by the injury to the ACL. Joe Burrow is a better quarterback than Justin Fields. Justin Fields is a top 5 quarterback in the nation, but Joe Burrow is arguably the best quarterback in college football, with the guy on the other sideline vying for that title as well, Trevor Lawrence, of course. LSU has slightly better wide receivers, slightly better offensive line than Ohio State. Not substantially, but I would rate those two units to be better than Ohio State somewhat. Give the running back, J.K. Dobbins, the nod substantially over Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So LSU has better offense than Ohio State overall, both prolific, both very strong, but Ohio State bogged down against Clemson in the second half, couldn't complete the drives, and of course had the miscommunication. Again, another gift. Credit Clemson with making the interception and Ohio State not making the play, but to the point that Clemson did not make the stop in a way that there had to be a football play made. The ball was thrown to the safety in the end zone. It was an easy pick. That ended the game. Will LSU make that kind of mistake? Will they make the mistakes that Ohio State did? The sample of 13 games, now 14 games for LSU against Georgia, Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Texas, Oklahoma, tells us that LSU is not going to most likely make those kind of mistakes. Defensively, Ohio State has a better defensive line than LSU. The secondaries are probably the two best in the nation. They're very comparable. Where LSU is much better than Ohio State is at linebacker. They've got the athletes to have a chance to keep up with slot receivers and with running backs out of the backfield. Mr. Etienne. Clemson, on the flip side, is the best team that LSU has played. But again, all the teams we survey that LSU has on its schedule, starting with Alabama, Florida, Auburn, Texas, Georgia, Oklahoma, they all have units, not complete teams that are as good as Clemson, although Alabama possibly could be in that argument with a healthy Tua Tagovailoa. But each of those teams, Auburn's defensive front, for example, Florida's secondary, for example, they all have units that are as good as Clemson. So LSU has collectively, over the course of 14 games, seen units at wide receiver, offensive line, defensive line, linebacker, secondary. All the units they've seen from various teams are as good as Clemson. Not the entirety of the team, but they have seen units at that caliber. Although they've not seen the quarterback, Tua was a bit injured to Trevor Lawrence's standard. The one X factor that we don't know about is that since LSU was not challenged in the playoff game, will the bright lights finally hit them in the big stage? This Clemson unit is battle-tested with championships on the line. LSU, of course, passed that test in flying colors in regards to a challenge of the big stage against Oklahoma. But I think that team, that coaching staff could see that they were clearly better than Oklahoma going into the game. And then it was obvious to them physically after just a few series in that game. Before I make my prediction, would like to get your picks. So leave your predictions, your score predictions down in the comment section below. And I'm going to read through them during a live stream prior to the game on Monday night. Also, join us at 1 o'clock Eastern Time for a live stream right here at Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, with Pigskin Pete talking Clemson. Again, that's going to be a live stream available to you. Join the live chat room at 1 o'clock Eastern Time on Monday with Pigskin Pete. We did our LSU live stream on Sunday night, so please check that out with Pot of Gold. Final score from the Superdome. LSU wins the national championship over Clemson in a tremendous game. Not quite as much offense as people anticipate. Tigers beat the Tigers, the Bayou Bengals, over the Clemson Tigers, 38-34. That's my pick right here on Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football. Now I need your selection on the national championship game.